Thank you. Good morning. I'm so glad to be here. I got a 10-page sermon for you. But happy Father's Day first. I remember my dad well. I have many stories to tell about him. He was 6'4", 210 pounds, and he knew how to apply the hand of knowledge to the seat of education. So we learned young to obey and follow our earthly father. Anyway, he's in heaven enjoying that now, and we'll see him again someday. But meanwhile, growing up, I grew up in Michigan. I am no longer a Michigander, I'm a Floridian. I got tired of snow and cold. So you can have it. I'll visit you in the summertime. So we came up to bother Lance today and some of the other relatives that remain in Michigan and tour around your neighborhood. But as a kid, I grew up in Holt, Michigan, an hour and 15 minutes away. Grew up in a church. We went Sunday mornings, Sunday nights, Wednesday nights, and any time in between that was required. So I knew what attending church was. We had a lot of missionaries that the church sponsored, and they would come home on furlough every few years and visit the church. So as a kid, I felt like I knew these people, and I was envious or interested in their adventures as a missionary. Then as I got older, I married a minister and went to church even more than I did as a kid. But in 1985, we had the opportunity to go to India. One of my childhood dreams was to be a nurse, marry a doctor, and either go to India or Brazil to be missionary. Well, at that time, my husband had finished his first doctorate. It wasn't in medicine, and I was the one who hadn't fulfilled the nursing thing. So I went to nursing school and learned I didn't know enough, so I went back to nursing school and learned some more and didn't know enough and went back again. I finally became a nurse practitioner, which I am today. I still don't know enough, but I'm okay with that. But in India, I saw poverty. You think of India as a poor country. And this was like, 35 years ago, 1985? But then living in Florida, Haiti's like close. It's just a little plane hop over to Haiti. And I started going to Haiti some. And I saw worse or enough poverty comparable to India. And I thought that was impressive. In 2008, we met a lady named Sharon Brown. She's a lawyer in Fort Lauderdale. And she knew Pastor Moses, who is from Kampala, Uganda. And they have the mission work there, and they have some schools, and their church has sponsored other churches, sister churches, baby churches, whatever you want to call them, around Uganda and the surrounding countries there. And there's over 300 of those little baby churches growing from over the years. We went up to northern Uganda. Uganda, first of all, is about the size of Oregon, so it's not a very big country. But we went up to the north, and we saw the remains of, and the effects of war. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the history of Uganda. It's been a sad place to live. There was a bad guy named Joseph Kony who had the Lord's Liberation Army. And he would get his soldiers and travel around and take and do whatever they wanted. And that had been going on for 20 years. Most of the people in the north had moved to refugee camps because they weren't safe at home. The soldiers would come by. They would steal children and make children soldiers out of the boys, ask them to do terrible things. I don't know if you've ever watched any of those movies. There's a few of them about all the atrocities that happen. Steal the girls to become wives of the soldiers, plunder along the way, doing unspeakable things. And so the people there were living in fear in refugee camps. Now, they had mud huts. In the north of Uganda, that mud huts is the normal housing situation. So the houses were, see these squares on the floor? There's like, this one here is a dark brown with white in the middle, and then there's white with brown in the middle. Can you imagine a house round as big as that square? That's the size of their house, a mud hut. Probably about 12 feet in diameter. Maybe that's only 10. But anyway, it's small. And they were like, here was a hut, and here was a hut, and there was a hut. You take 2 steps and you'd be in your neighbor's yard. There's no plumbing. There's no electricity. There's no grocery store. There's no toys. There's no playground. If you were lucky, there might be somebody traveling around teaching a school, and as a kid you would go to school. But there weren't books, there weren't classrooms. They'd meet under a mango tree or something like that. But it was so sad. The things that they received were from NGOs that helped out, and there would be a lot of different countries from around the world supporting or donating to these refugee camps. So we got involved there. We went and worked in northern Uganda the first year. Then Sudan sits on Uganda. And these people in South Sudan heard about us, and they came down and said, come help us. We need your help too. Because the same Lord's Liberation Army was ravaging them, as well as some other people. So this is me a few years ago in a mud hut, and I've changed a bit, in a mud hut in Sudan. I stayed in this mud hut. I lived there for a whole week, and then I went back the next year and lived there again for a whole week. As a nurse practitioner, they gave me all the medicines that we'd taken along, because there's no pharmacies nearby. So I lived in there with all the stacks of medicines that we used every day. And then I did that. We went back to Uganda for several other trips. I've been to like 20 different countries and done mission trips in most all of them. But I keep going back to Uganda because I love it there. The people are great. They are welcoming. They appreciate what you do for them. Anything that personal money or gifts that I have taken from people go to the organization called Amani Malele, and they use every penny. If you give $600 for a mud hut, every penny of that $600 goes to a mud hut. They don't like skim off their administrative fees and help out this guy and that guy along the way. It 100% goes. But so this is a mud hut I lived in South Sudan. Back to Uganda now. I went back in 2016. If we can get the next picture. This is a little girl named Joran. She was 5 months old, and we were running a medical clinic, kind of like a pop-up medical clinic, and people from all the villages around would come. Now this is very rural. There's no electricity, there's no running water. You get to use an outhouse or a nearby bush. This was a little girl, and I could tell. She was 5 months old when I first met Joran. And I could tell she wasn't looking at things. She would kind of wave her hand in front of her face trying to see the shadow. And so we checked her out because we had a couple doctors we'd taken with us. And she said she needs to be evaluated. We took her and her mother, Sarah, back to Kampala with us. They'd never been out of their village before. We had arrived in a bus, and they rode on the bus with us back to Kampala, which was probably only maybe 50, 75 miles, but it took 3 or 4 hours to drive it. And they did surgery on her. So they had to go in because she was so small. They went in and removed the cataracts from her eyes. She had a syndrome called rubella syndrome. I've never heard of it in the United States. But there can be 4 problems. Cataracts on the eyes, hearing loss, sorry, I got to come up with the right word. She had a patent PDA. In a baby, when they're born, they have openings in their heart for the blood flow for in utero purposes. When they're born, they're supposed to close up immediately. One of hers did not, so she was having insufficient blood flow. And slowness in learning. So the cataracts we did, it cost 3 million shillings to have her cataracts removed. Do you know how much money that is? Sounds like a lot. $850. How many of you have had cataract surgeries and it only cost you and your insurance company $850? Anyway, so they removed the lenses. They gave her glasses to try to straighten her eye muscles. She had to wait a year and go back, grow bigger, and they could go back and put lenses in her eye. And now she's, if we go to the next picture, she's 6 years old. This is her with Pastor Moses, the pastor that we work with, the main guy in Uganda. And that's Jordan today. She's 6 and trying to be ready to go to school. It looks like her vision is not still, I don't think she's focusing right, but because she was delayed in the cataract repair, the eye muscles in her eyes never learned their proper movements as an infant. So she's got to overcome that. Living out in a village, it's not an easy task. That's just one story, but there's many more I could tell you about. But meanwhile, there's 8 schools that we work with that Pastor Moses leads. This is the one, this is my favorite, if I can call it that, because it's the first one we went to. This is up by Gulu, which is the main city in the north. This town is called Lagutu. They've started building a school there. It's kind of just out in the field. It's not like in town or anything. And there's no housing nearby for the teachers to stay at. So this school has built these mud huts for the teachers. So this is teacher Elizabeth in her mud hut a couple of years ago, pre-COVID. See the solar panel out in her yard? So if she has any power, it's because she got it from there. See her clothes drying rack on the roof? In her secured front door? Anyway, so there were some there, and I think the next picture shows what they want to go from mud huts to this kind of housing, but nicer than this one. But this is their first sample. And she had moved, last time I saw Elizabeth, she had moved into one of these. And, but it's still small. They want to go to that. But then in January, I heard from Pastor Moses. And he sent this email. He said, "Hello, Judy. Please remember the teaching staff at Lagutu. Yesterday, the fire caught the 9 huts and were burnt down and properties destroyed in fire. We thank God no one died because it happened during the daytime when school was going on." And he was going to travel up there and find out more about it. That was January 13th, I heard from him. Now, somebody heard about these. So all their belongings and whatever minimal things they have, I think we missed a picture of a kitchen. Maybe it's still coming. There we go. That's like the kitchen, the cooking pot, and stuff inside the hut. But you can see between a hot stove and a solar panel, if it was powering something that sparked, and the houses, these huts are further apart than the refugee camps, but they're still close together. So somehow the fire sparked from one and could travel over to the dried roof of the next one. So anyhow, you can go back to forward another one. So that's the fire happening, and fortunately nobody was injured, but a lot of property loss. But someone donated some money to help repair, like re-roof these and replace some of the fire damage. But Pastor Moses also said they were short 10 teacher houses already. So I said, well, actually Lance said, well, let's work on a mud hut project. So I asked about a mud hut. They said it costs about $600 to rebuild a mud hut. They have see the cement foundation there? So it's not just dirt. It's not mud hut on the dirt ground. This is a high class mud hut. So they want to build some more of these. So I don't do much. I'm kind of a nobody. I just do what I can do. So I ask my friends and family and say, hey, do you want to help with this? Or most people who know me know that I like to go and do things like this. You can go on to the next picture if you want, please. And say, do you want to help out? Or like Lance presented it to your kind pastor who said, yeah, let's do that. So it's people like you that do things and help people like this. This is one of the groups. I think this was labeled 2017. This is part American, part Ugandan people that help out and run a medical clinic, like a pop-up medical clinic, and we do VBS with the children. So it's fun, it's work, it's hot, it's humid, it's dirty, and you don't really always get clean every day, but we provide enough water so you don't dehydrate. And it's a good time, no matter what your skill is. I happen to be a nurse practitioner because I wanted to become one. Whatever your talent is, there's a job for you. So whether you're at home, sitting here, working with your church, talking to your neighbors, working down the street, or this Bernadette's group I see on your sign outside, whether you're pastoring a church, whether you're working throughout Michigan, the United States, or you're going to other places in the world, God has something for you to do. So we all have that task, and we all need to get busy and do it. So thank you for letting me visit. I do have Christy, I guess, made that lovely hut poster out in the lobby, which was beautiful. Thank you. And all the VBS decorations I'm enjoying, too. So great job. Pray for a good week for you. But if you want to read anything, there's some things out there. There's some papers like this. This talks about engaged missions, which is kind of actually my husband started it, but my individual group. It's a 501c3, and Amani Milele, the bottom half of this, is the group that I work with in Uganda. I'm planning to go back. I should leave on August 28th. We're going to, with my friend Sharon, go back and check out the schools, check out the mud huts. There are some new pop-up refugee camps in northern Uganda on the border for the South Sudanese people who still can't go back home to Sudan. So I'm going to visit with them and maybe pop over to Ghana with my friend Sharon. So if you want to join anytime, you can find out information here. You can ask Lance. You can contact me.